Welcome back to the Futurist Media Podcast. We have a special edition today. We are talking about the recent events in Nigeria, and particularly the ABIA state. And I have here a gentleman, the Honorable Tony Kalu, who has worked extensively in the Nigerian State Department as a representative of the ABIA state. Good evening. Good evening, Tony. How are you?
Good evening. I'm very well.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for agreeing to speak with me, and I look forward to this conversation. This We are going to be discussing, firstly, uh, uh, upsetting recent events from the United States foreign policy of President Donald Trump. Uh, uh, a more extensive travel ban has recently been set in place that affects Nigeria, and it doesn't seem to reflect serious concerns about the region, but rather it seems to reflect a kind of callousness. Tell us a little bit about your impressions of this travel ban, its impact on Nigeria or the Abia states.
The first of all, thank you so much for having me on this program.
Yes.
Um, Anyone, because first of all, when you come to this travel ban, I am not ready to use a broad brush to say it's not necessary for the United States to have a travel ban on any nation or country they deem probably hostile to the United States or deem it probably a danger to have their citizens flood the United States. So, with that being said, Nigeria shouldn't, and in no sense can Nigeria remain on such travel ban for several reasons, starting with the fact that we have a very robotic diplomatic relationship with the United States to begin with. Um, we have so many Nigerians, productive Nigerians, the most educated doctors, foreign doctors in America are Nigerians. The
Yes.
most educated foreigners or any nation to become Americans are Nigerians. So I don't see any reason why, because of some little misunderstanding or some little act of terrorism in just a fraction part of the country, should be a reason why the entire nation should be banned from coming to the United States. It's
Mm.
um it's not wise. It's not politically sound. It doesn't make any sense. I can understand if they have issues with Nigerians. President Trump. He could have the president of Nigeria and the entire Nigerian diplomatic corps sit down and hatch it out and figure out how to deal with specific issues individually, but not banning the entire country from coming to the United States.
Mm.
I don't even know how you begin to enforce it because so many Nigerian Americans have so many family members back in Nigeria who are interested in visiting, and we are interested in going back. And when that relationship continues, a lot of good things come into the United States. Now, I'm not trying to suggest or make any accusation when it comes to the policymakers here in the United States. But if you keep so many countries and so many peoples off the shores of the United States, then where will the next Mark Zuckerberg come from? Where would the next founder of Google and so on and so forth come from?
Mm.
So you see, the whole idea of United States is a whole bunch of people from different background, from different creed, coming together with one belief and making it one great nation. And it has worked for over 200 years. Why do you want to stop now? I mean,
Mm.
if I'm not mistaken, besides the Indian Americans, every other person on this land, their forefathers came from somewhere and did the best they could, contributed their own portion in order to build a great American. And I'm sure the Nigerian communities are no different.
Mm. Yes, sir. Yes. And this is an excellent point that you have made, that compared to 11% of Americans overall, 29% of Nigerian Americans have graduate degrees. That's doctors, lawyers, scholars like yourself. And this is the policies of Trump once again reflect sort of a nativism and an ignorance rather than the realities of these situations to a high degree, and that is unfortunate. In looking at this matter, it seems that even in recent weeks with this travel ban, Trump is polling pretty well in Nigeria. He's to what do you attribute this relative popularity of this, who I would regard as a callous individual? This is precisely this callousness that inspired myself to become a candidate for the Transhumanist Party for president. But what do you attribute this popularity to?
And actually, this may probably be one of the best questions you could have asked tonight
Mm,
because it beats me. I have wondered about it over and over. It's almost like when you have a battered, woman syndrome, a woman who's being abused by a man, and still she tells you that's the only man that she loves more than life. And you're
mm,
wondering what is going on. This man treats you wrong. This man hurts you.
mm,
He abuses you. Sometimes it could be the woman. But what I'm trying to say here is how can you fall in love with your abuser? And that is almost what is going on here. The Nigerian community, not much of the ones that live here, but the ones in Nigeria, they love Trump so much. Majority of them, they adore him. And I begin to wonder. I have been in conversations with them, I've been in political arguments with them. They just cannot even explain to you why, except for one singular thing they always say. He is a man who can do whatever he wants, whenever he wants it, and nobody can stop him. Nobody controls him. So I began to ask them, is it that what you're now finding in the current president of the United States of Nigeria, which is Muhammadu Buhari, what you're not finding in him that you would have loved to find in him? Is that what you're somehow projecting it on Trump? And somehow Trump becomes attractive because you feel like there are no cabal controlling Trump. You feel like Trump can override whatever the law says and do whatever he wants. Well, if that's what you think, Trump is getting in a whole lot of hot water lately. Here is the third president to ever be impeached in the United States.
mm,
So I don't know how you qualify that kind of situation, but their love for Trump, their admiration for Trump coming from the Nigerians, mostly the ones back in Nigeria, is something that does not make sense. It's not born out of sound judgment because I have really engaged them. Try, like, give me something. Make me believe. Let me understand why this is. Because I live in New York City. I know Trump as a human being even before he ever ran for the presidency. I knew who he was. I knew his attitude when he wanted to close the 72nd exit on West Side Highway. When the entire city told him, we need this exit to exist because we need to, leave the West Side onto the West Side Highway from that exit. It was a very, very important exit and entrance. Trump took the city to court. Trump dragged the city all because he had buildings in the area. So it was all about what Trump wanted. He didn't give a hoot about whoever else that may suffer. And a lot of people had to suffer because of that. And Trump did not care. The moment he won the case in court, he shut that exit down till today. So I know this man firsthand. It's never about anybody else but Trump. So you tell me what you love about Trump, and they
mm,
still have no answer for me. So my
mm,
brother, let's be honest with you, with It's a very, very sick kind of love and admiration that they cannot even explain themselves.
Hmm. Yes, and I know the New Yorkers don't have so many good things to say about Trump, to their credit. Um,
Nope.
uh, and we should point out that this recent travel ban was enacted at the end of January, just a few short weeks ago, and it affects countries across North Africa and the Middle East, but it also does affect Myanmar and Kyrgyzstan,
Yes.
two countries that some further removed there. And the previous travel ban enacted by Trump in 2017, we could say had a similar kind of dimension on the world stage. It does tend to focus unfairly on particular groups, and this does seem to reflect that nativist and fear mongering tendency in a person like Trump. We've spoken about a little bit about how Nigerians have responded to this. How do you feel that this travel ban affects Nigerians still perhaps living in ABIA, or affects Nigerian Americans? How does this what is the impact here?
Well, not so much for the ones that live here in the United States. Okay. Whether you're a citizen or you're a resident, not so much so. But for people that would love to come for summer vacations, people that would love to come here for business, people that have so many other things to do here, including exchange programs and so on and so forth, of course it will affect them. And the impact will be felt. United States is a very important country to every other nation in the world. Nigeria is not an exception to this. However, I believe at some point there will be a review of this very travel ban. I'm sure of that because they know how important Nigeria is and how important America is as well to Nigerians. So I'm sure they will come back to the table, they will review it, and I'm sure they will be able to get that to a point where they may have to be able to solve whatever problem or misunderstanding without, using a broad brush to paint everybody black and say, don't come on in. No, that will not work. It cannot hold and it should not hold.
Hmm. And just like these border concentration camps, we see again a set of policies that reflects a kind of abusive or callous treatment of people who are legitimately themselves fleeing repression. So people who are in need of our help, people who should be allowed to have asylum, are being maltreated or ignored by this administration, and it's a pattern that we've seen time and time again. It's deeply upsetting. Um, the of this travel ban, do you feel that do you think that it has implications for the larger region? Do you feel that you mentioned that this could just be uh, um, an unusual moment in history, that this will eventually be done away with, maybe when Trump is no longer president. What is your feelings about the region as a whole as it relates to policies of this kind?
Well, the way most people in Africa see it is if this can happen to Nigeria, then it can happen to any other African nation. And that sends chills down their spine,
Mhm.
every last one of them. Um, of course, there's no doubt we will all like to have a relationship, economic relationship, diplomatic relationship, and otherwise with the United States. And United States play a major role in most countries of the world. So when you do something like this, there's no way you cannot expect it to be felt in the entire region on a whole host of issues, whether it's like I say, economically, whether it's even socially, religion, just you name it, it will affect people greatly, even more than he knows. But I am very optimistic that this, in the case of Nigeria, it will be reviewed whether Trump leaves office or not. My hope, honestly, my sincere hope is that um, I was never, first of all, I was never expecting Trump to be removed through the impeachment. But I was also expecting that the case why Trump should not win re-election could be made as a result of this impeachment. And I'm sure it has been made to some extent. Let's see what happens in November. I believe Trump may not be able to win re-election. If he does, this case, this whole issue of banning Nigerians from coming to the United States will be revisited and will be reviewed. If not before then, but right after the election. But the good sense tells me that Trump, or rather optimism tells me that Trump will lose re-election, and the next president will normalize things and begin to reverse some of these damages that Trump has done.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And you made reference to this perhaps, but I'd like to add that on Wednesday, the United States House Judiciary Committee has advanced a bill that would repeal this very travel ban. This effect of targeting Muslim majority countries or countries of the kind that we've described. This is called the No Ban Act, and we hope to see that advance further in the U.S. Congress and common sense to prevail. In closing, Mr. Kalu, do you have any other words of advice for the American people about how to avoid the kinds of fear-based thinking and simplistic thinking that motivate these kind of actions like this travel ban?
Well, let's see. How did Trump come to power? Trump, because to understand what is going on, you need to go back to the beginning. I remember in 2000, and it was in 2012, when President Obama was running for re-election. The Republicans were looking for a certain kind of candidate, someone with such a bombastic nature that would go after Obama ruthlessly, take him through the mud. And during their primary, you could see them rising all the way to the top and bringing them down. This week it will be Newt Gingrich. The next week it will be somebody else. All the way. But there was this 35 to 40% of Republican voters, the far right wingers, that insisted on the very kind of candidate they wanted. And in the end, they settled for Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney couldn't get the job done. You and I know what happened. Now, in the end, Mitt Romney was too much of a gentleman for them. Even till today, he's still too much of a gentleman for that very particular type of Republicans that I'm talking about. So they found a man who was willing to give them the red meat, and that is Donald Trump. And he gave them the red meat. He fed these very far wingers what they wanted to hear, and they voted him in 2016. And then he came into power. Now, Trump does not necessarily believe all of these things that he does, but he had to cater to this very particular portion of the far right wing. These are the people that kept him in power. These are the people that brought him to power. So most of the things he's doing, whether he's enacting some of these laws and so on and so forth, or these very moves that he's making, is for the most part to please them. Now, Nigeria is not a Muslim nation, no matter what anybody tells you.
Yes, sir.
Nigeria practices freedom of worship. We have Muslims, quite a good number of them. We have Christians, and we have other religions in between, including people, pagans. We have them all in Nigeria. And we all try to live in a nation that one or the other person believe that their religion is superior to the others. Mostly the Muslims, they believe their religion is superior. So they try to practice it whichever way they think is the best way to please God, Allah in their case. However, we are still in that same country. We are still neighbors. We still love one another. We're still one Nigerian. And then when Trump comes and punishes people from the South who are majority Christian, for what some few in the north who are majority Muslims did is wrong. So there are several reasons why this very particular ban should be revisited, and then look into it and see how we can be able to deal with whatever specific problem that we have, and then maybe we'll move on from there. That's all I can say for now on the travel ban.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Very good. Thank you for this wonderful discussion, Tony. And I hope, as you do, that this matter will be better addressed in the coming weeks. We have already seen some attempts to do that on the part of the United States House, and further redress here is appropriate. I thank you for these insights, sir, and have a good evening.
Enjoyed this show and would you like to see more? Please like and subscribe. And also check out benzion2020.com for updates on the campaign, and to go to transhumanist-party.org and sign, become a part of the Transhumanist Party.